Our first presenter, Abraham Zorilla, catalyzes community cohesion in his professional life, his day job as a Houston planner. And he's an avid Latin dancer by night. Hailing from Peru, Abraham shifted from a career in finance to urban planning, driven to rectify disparities that he witnessed in his native Lima. With a master's in urban planning and environmental policy, he now leads as complete communities planner in Houston, focusing on distressed areas like Gulfton and Alif Westwood. His dance expertise, from rumba to tango, serves as both personal expression and a means to unite Houston's varied populations. Speaking Spanish and employing an inclusive, empathetic approach, Abraham builds trust and fosters civic engagement, improving neighborhood quality of life. His adept choreography of communal relationships and community relationships and projects reflects his dedication to impactful change and the advancement of local initiatives. Abraham, please unmute and begin. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. That was great. Yes, my name is Abraham Zorilla. I'm originally from Peru. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about what I do here in Houston. And yes, I've been with the city of Houston for the last 9 years. I'm with the planning department, and I'm with a division that deal a lot with the community. City of Houston doesn't have zoning, and it's the most diverse city in the whole country, which gives us the opportunity to create action plan, ordinances, and restrictions based on community needs. Ordinances that residents can apply for to protect the character of the neighborhood. And I think that the best way for me to share the experiences that I have within the city of Houston is to tell you a story about how I interacted with the most diverse neighborhood in the city of Houston. With that, next slide. That will be the Gulfton community. The Gulfton community is a very diverse neighborhood. And within that area, there are more than 50 languages spoken. Most of the residents come from Central America, Middle East, and Mexico. It's a very interesting location. It only has one single family neighborhood surrounded by more than 90 apartment complexes, 15,000 units, 40,000 residents. Once you get there, you're in a different place. There's different type of restaurants, different type of houses and apartments. And I had the opportunity to, as a planner one, when I was hired for the city of Houston, to create an action plan for that neighborhood. Next slide. So just to give you a little background story about this. In 2017, Mayor Turner created this initiative called Complete Communities, where he selected some neighborhood that needed assistance to create an action plan that focuses on anything. We're talking about parks, infrastructure, housing, safety, health, education, you name it. So the main goal for us is to have 3 public meetings, make sure that we invite all residents, business owners, and nonprofit organizations and basically everybody who live, work, and play in that neighborhood, and create an action plan and have a celebration. Make sure that we acknowledge everybody, we hear everybody, and based on their input, we create an action plan. So with that, we come out with a strategy. If we can go to the next slide. So what we did was to identify all the stakeholders within that community. We're talking about civic club presidents. Well, actually, there was only one single family neighborhood, so there was only one civic club president, but several nonprofit organizations exist in that community. So we talk to them. We identify people who are who act like local leaders in the community, churches, schools, anybody who can help us identify who live in the community and help us bring people to to our public meetings. In the meantime, we attended those meetings organized by the nonprofit organizations. Any activities happening in the community, we were there. We were passing flyers, letting people know about this complete community initiative coming to their neighborhood, inviting them to the public meetings. We had the flyers basically in different languages, and we partner with other city departments, the county, to help us spread the word. We went to different activities at the school, churches, making sure that everybody's aware of complete communities and let them know about the upcoming meetings at the time. So somehow I became a familiar face. I work really close with different organizations. And anytime I was introduced to a community member, they were saying, "Hey, this is Abraham from the city, and he is here to talk about complete community." So not that I gave them a speech, but I talked to about complete community so often that they were familiar with what it is and what I was there for. So it was great. So we had our first public meeting, and we ended up having 200 people. We have food donated by local businesses in the area. We have representatives from different agencies, including state representative, county, Congress. It was a fantastic event. We heard a lot from the community, and I was very proud for what we did for that neighborhood. However, next slide. It was not enough. At that meeting, we realized that less than 10% of the attendees were refugees and immigrants, which is the majority of residents in that neighborhood. So as much effort we put to let everybody know about this meeting, we learned that not everybody was going to come, unfortunately. So we changed our strategy just a little bit. Next slide. So what we did is, based on the meetings that we had with those stakeholders, that, by the way, we met with them individually. We had probably more than 70 individual meetings with all these people. We partnered really close with the agencies and people who work very close with refugees and immigrants. We talked to them to help us identify who actually live in this neighborhood, where they're coming from. So which the next step that we did was to learn about them, who they are, why they're here, what happened in their home country that made them come here, learn about their situations, not only to have empathy, but to understand them, to make sure that we know what they're going through and how hard it is for them to trust local government. I mean, think about it. When they leave their country because their voices are not heard in their own country, maybe when they come here, they feel that their voices will not be heard. Mm-hmm. So we identify who they are, how they work together, if they do work together, who don't work together, and who we need to have a different type of strategy to make sure that we can listen and we provide input. So what happened is that we established this relationship with this community, but specifically with the stakeholders, right? So we became part of those communities and of that community. And by being part of that community, what I mean is that we were welcome in their meetings. Those meetings happen in apartment complexes, in parks, in schools, somebody's houses. Unfortunately, we learned that no matter how hard we try, they will not be coming to our public meetings, even though we provide interpreters, boards in different languages, their food. We even have people performing in our events, so for them to feel welcome. And what we did is just going to them, making sure that we welcome to their meetings, that we can talk to them, or we have people who can assist us with interpretation and translation. Again, Houston is very diverse, so having people who speak a specific language is not that difficult to find. But creating that partnership is important. And these organizations also had a hard time building that trust with those community members that welcomed me to their meetings. Wasn't an easy task. It was very exciting to see how they are familiarized with my face and who I am, and the trust they have to tell me about the issues they deal in the community. So it was great to see how the input and the projects needed to improve the quality of life were included in the complete community action plan. I know it's a short but it took a lot of work, team effort, and because of that experience, I was able to implement that as a strategy to different other neighborhoods that I work and create action plans.
Mhm.
So I just want to finish my part of the presentation with some tips. When you deal with refugees and immigrants, for example, the Latino community or the Middle Eastern community, you do not to see us as one big group. When I moved to the States, I'm originally from Peru. I've been here since I was 18 years old. I'm 42, so I've lived more of my life here. But something I learned that is a very big Latino culture in the States. However, the immigrants, do not have that culture, and we don't feel part of that culture. What I'm trying to say is that we do not eat that same food. We don't have the same folkloric music. We don't have the same history. So when you talk to Latinos, it's important to identify who they are, where they're coming from, not because, especially because we are proud of where we come from, but we're not really proud of being Latino. As for us, Latino could be a way to identify where we're coming from, but know who we are. And I'm assuming that could be also the mentality for people, for the Asian community, African community, and refugees. Be open-minded. When I deal with refugees and immigrants, I heard many things that never heard before. Just one big example is that when I was talking to the refugee communities, I learned that they like to live together, and sometimes they live in a one-bedroom apartment, and they had 10 people living within that one-bedroom apartment. I learned that it's very important not to react, not to have any face expression. That's what they do. That's how they feel comfortable. Might not be safe to be in that type of environment, such as in a small area. But for me to build trust, it was important for me just to listen and not judge. Do not be afraid to try new things. To be part of that culture of that community, you also need to try their food, go to the activities, dance their music, maybe learn a couple of words in their language. I'm not saying to change your way of life, but to be part of the community is you need to also be familiarized with their culture and the food they eat. I mean, you'll be surprised. There's really good food out there. Do not try to understand, just accept. When you talk to them, there are things that you never heard before. They do things in a way that we don't do it. And it's hard for us to understand why they're doing the things the way they do. So it's easy just to accept it. It's how it is. It's like speaking a language and you don't know why people say it this way. Like in Spanish, you say carro rojo. In English, you say red car. The rojo, red go first. Why? We don't know. It's just that's how it is. So basically, when you're talking to people and you learn new things about them and you don't know why they're doing things certain way, it's just how it is. Just accept it, and and eventually, once you accept how things are, then maybe you will learn and understand why they're doing things that way. Volunteer. When we meet with these stakeholders, we establish what is called the neighborhood support team. They help us with the logistic of the meeting, identify potential places for the meeting, and let us know where we can go to meet with the people to get their input. So these take time and effort. So the best I can do was to help them the same way. I provided maps for the meetings. I was the middle person when they needed to reach out to somebody from the city. I volunteer for some events. A big example, this is a different community, the Westwood community, which is pretty much people from the Hispanic and African Americans. I attended an event in the church. They asked me to be an interpreter for them, which I did. It was a great event. Gave me the opportunity for people to see my face and learn who I am. Gave me the opportunity to talk to them individually. And what I learned at that meeting is that there was a big issue with prostitution and human trafficking in that neighborhood. So speaking with them was able for me to identify what the issues was and where those issues were happening. Because people were afraid to speak that in the public meeting, but I was able to talk to them in the very in a different environment where they feel comfortable. And be respectful. I mean, if they allow you to go to their meetings, even though we're all in the States, is the rules, it's like going back home, is their community, they have their own rules, beliefs. So be respectful of that. And I'll give you another example. When I was talking to the refugee community, I was able to attend. Well, let me put it a different way. I learned that is meetings that were happening with the wife, the woman from the refugee community, and even though they wanted me to participate and have this conversation to learn about the issues they're having within that community, I wasn't welcome because I'm a man. I was not allowed to be there. So I invited a colleague of mine who can be there on my behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And she learned a lot from that community. She got the input we needed. However, at the end of the meeting, the lady who invited me to this meeting came to me, and she was very upset. The things were, and I still don't know why. And I was very sad about that, because that trust that they took some time to build, it was gone. So there was something happened there that, and I think we could be prevented if we knew more about their culture, and and understand that it was their meeting, not ours, so we couldn't really have control of it. So anyway, so that's my experience. A couple of tips. I think on the next slide you can find my email address or contact information. If you feel free to contact me if you have questions or learn about Houston, which I know is not a very popular place, but you find the best food from anywhere in the world in Houston. Mm-hmm. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity, and yeah, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Abraham. That was fantastic. And I think you laid in some really important elements there in terms of getting to know people before you try to work with them. Get to know them before you work with them. And I think this is very important in many, many cultures. We have a system of laws in the United States. You can make a contract with someone you don't know, and by signing the contract, you have a whole series of protections that come in. And we're used to working in under contracts, doing things very efficiently, very quickly. But in a lot of other cultures, the legal system doesn't work that way. The government does not necessarily represent the people, particularly the people of lower stature, the ones that are refugees. And so there's a whole different take on government and on formalities. And I think it's very important to break through that and have personal relations, which is what you were bringing out. And yeah, you're going to make some mistakes without even realizing what you're doing, because especially I think when you misidentify someone, you tell them something about themselves that that you think you understand because you saw YouTube or you read it somewhere, and it turns out to be totally off base, because that's in the southern part of the country and this person's from the north, and it works a different way. So you have to be humble and very careful. I really appreciate your work and what you've done. I've toured with Abraham some of these neighborhoods, and he definitely knows them like the back of his hand. He knows all the alleys, all the people. We went into some apartment complexes and talked to some of the people there, and it was an interesting, really fantastic outing. You're doing great work, Abraham. Thank you so much. Although you didn't mention how your dancing comes into your community planning, I'd love to know that.
That will be for another webinar.
Another webinar. Okay. Abraham is a professional dancer, so just so you know.